All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone for this eagerly awaited virtual spotlight for Aria Hill. We're thrilled to have you join us from wherever you might be in virtual land. But Aria is a current master's candidate at Harvard Graduate School of Design. She's a Virginia Tech alum and NOMAS leader, and that's actually where I first met Aria, was with her involvement with NOMAS at Virginia Tech. Also, while she was at Virginia Tech, she did a TEDx talk where she addressed the changing face of architecture. Aria has also worked with work program architects in Norfolk, where she was a recipient of one of their first diversity and advancement internship scholarships. She's also the co-founder of a design firm called The Garden, where they do real fun things. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to turn over the screen to Aria. I just want to thank everybody for coming out to today's spotlight. The floor is yours, Aria.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. I'll start sharing now. Okay. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Hi everyone. Nice to have you here. Like Ian said, I just graduated from Virginia Tech about a year ago. And I have been at the GSD, Harvard GSD for over a year now. And I just figured today I would just want to share what I've been up to since I started going to school there. Um, I've loosely broken it into parts, but I was mentioning to Ian earlier, it's super informal, just more of a sharing session. Just sharing what I've been up to and what I've thought have been some cool things I've been up to. Yeah, so headed off to Harvard in August of 2022. My mom and my brother in July of 2022 helped me drive from Virginia all the way up to Boston. It's like a 14-hour drive. Dropped off my stuff, then we drove back. And then my sister helped me do it again in August for the real move. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Long drive. But it's pretty scenic. Yeah, I think in about this time frame, as I was starting, I kind of felt, like not sure, maybe there was a little bit of imposter syndrome or what have you, but super excited to get started going to school and going to learn at the GSD. So a quick shot from my very first day there. We had orientation and I finally got my ID, and the woman on the left speaking is the dean, Sarah Whiting, of the GSD currently. But yeah, at this time I was feeling, a bunch of emotions, um, relief, joy, all of the things at this time. But yeah, super excited to get to work, and um, was pleasantly surprised by the community that's there at the GSD. I think one of the things that really drew me to the school and the program was separate from the academic side was the people. It's super diverse. Over half of the student population at the GSC is international, are international students, and people are from all over the world. The smallest countries you can think of, there's probably a student there at the GSC, which was very interesting to me. But the community is very tight knit, very supportive. Kendall Nicholson, he also was there with me. He did a similar spotlight recently as well with VANOMA. One of my classmates, everyone just kind of knows everyone because it's a pretty big school when you think of like an architecture school, but in general, it's still not the biggest if you think about like Harvard Law or Harvard Medical School. But yeah, I think the people was a pleasant surprise and welcome gift to be in community with. So diving into the work, I at the GSD, they have the option to take studios in the MArch 2 program. It's a 2-year program. So you can take two option studios in your first year, and then either two option studios in your second year, or one option studio and do a thesis in the last semester. But they also have a configuration where you can take two 7-week module studios in one semester. Super intense, short bursts of creativity. And I chose to do that in my first semester there. So I took two studios my first semester at the GSD. Super fun, a lot of work. I would never do it again, but I'm glad I did it at least once. And the first module I took was a studio called What's a Difference, taught by Andrew Zago. Um, he does a lot of work in LA. He also teaches at SciArc. But the prompt for this quick 7-week studio was actually a project happening in Hollywood. Andrew had just won this competition where there are two sites on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, where the government was commissioning architects and designers to develop um, submissions, proposals for billboard designs for these two locations on the Sunset Strip, the beginning and the end. And so he had just won the project. Him and it was a collaboration between his firm and a Black designer there in LA. And so he presented the prompt to us, which was nice because it was, I think, the right amount of scope for a studio that was only going to last 7 weeks. But they pack a bunch in it. So he tasked us with looking at Ed Ruscha photographs. I wasn't familiar with Ed Ruscha before this studio, but he um, is a photographer. And over the course of decades, he had this truck and he would rig up this system where he'd have a camera in the back of the bed of the truck, and he'd just drive up and down Sunset Strip, both sides of Sunset Strip, taking photos of all the buildings. So our studio was tasked with kind of looking at all of these archives in a way of history. And Andrew kind of prompted us to look at or choose maybe some hokey, not Virginia Tech hokey, but like kind of like weird hokey things that kind of stood out to us. On the photo on the left, the awning, and it's, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but above the door, that kind of wacky organic form kind of stood out to me, and I kind of took that into the project. He also tasked us with creating a new merge strip. So we looked at Google Earth and took photos of all of the Google Earth photos of the current strip and stitched them together as well. And then simultaneously, we were looking at Jonathan Lasker paintings, just kind of trying to use both the logic of his paintings combined with the context of Ed Ruscha's photos to kind of develop a design or two designs for these billboards that we were looking to situate. So again, so we're kind of taking the logic that's in these drawings and diagramming and turning them into 3D designs. Something I found interesting was that I was expecting the work at the GST to be like super different, or maybe I would have to work differently there, but it's pretty much like I said on the screen, the bottom of the screen, it's the same type of work I'm doing, which was definitely surprising, but really exciting because it's very much self-initiated for the most part. Professors allow you to pursue your own interests, even if there's confines like there were in the studio. So kind of taking that logic from the Jonathan Lasker paintings, we began making series of models. This is actually my final model for a billboard design on one of the two locations. I think I was 3D printing for like 10 days straight. So the model is completely 3D printed. It's just taped, hot glued together. It's very haphazard. But yeah, so I kind of took some of these initial study models, these smaller models, I made out of foam and other materials. And in the bottom right, you can kind of see what the study model of this large model looks like. And I was kind of studying post-digitalism as well. I 3D scanned these little baby models and then made it into a 3D model. And then from there, I was able to uh, cut up and then 3D print all of these models into the final product. So the model itself is kind of large. Maybe for context, there's a paint can here, but it's maybe like 3 feet tall, maybe at the highest point 3 feet tall. But yeah, I think it was the most favorite thing I made all semester, and maybe all year. And we also made a series of these videos, kind of imagining what these billboards look like with actual billboards on them. So there's like Abbott Elementary, like runway videos, because it was a series of digital billboards and also analog billboards. The object on the right is my other submission for the second billboard. Um, the kind of the process I took when designing these was it all started, um, maybe you can kind of tell from the video, the billboard on the left is a series of one shape. It's actually the same awning, that hooky awning object. And I just made a bunch of them and kind of made it into what it is there. And then on the right, I took the same object, but I extruded it and offset it in the y-axis versus kind of haphazardly putting them together. But yeah, this is the work from that 7 weeks. Very, very quick, very fast. It's kind of amazing to see what you can do when you're kind of forced to work really, really quickly. But yeah, I really like that studio. Um, and like I was mentioning earlier, the work I was doing wasn't necessarily different. I mean, I was learning tools. There's a lot of like student-led tutorials for software at the JSD. So our studio was tasked with going back to this video. Our studio was tasked with making uh, a video in the same orientation, same setup, and everything. Each student was tasked with making one of these, and they were all compiled into one longer video. So for things like that, I mean, the professor set up tutorial workshops for us to learn the software. So I mean, I was learning new things, but maybe the sensibilities or the ways in which I was working were the same from Virginia Tech, which was nice. And I think the pinups were a little different though. I think overall the GSC is very theory heavy, which was new to me. So taking theoretical classes, learning about different ways in which to analyze architecture was definitely new and a challenge, but a welcome challenge. Yeah, I think it kind of broadened my horizons and the ways in which architecture can be received. So kind of going off that theory sentiment, in as an MArch 2, you have to take only one required class. It's called Pro Seminar. And you take it in the very first semester of your time there, and it's just a class with all of your MArch 2 cohorts. So there's like about 30 of us, and each week we're hearing from different professors there at the GST coming in to talk to us about their work. It's kind of a class meant to get us to think about interfacing with architects, and then also there's a aspect or an element of trying to prepare us to become professors, given that most MArch 2 students do become professors, since you don't really need an MArch 2 degree to practice or to become licensed in the field. But this one quote from Bell Hooks kind of stood out to me as I was learning and doing the readings in the fall semester. I think there was a lot of working, but also a lot of thinking as well, thinking about um, lack, beauty. I think that was a big theme of my year. And I think this quote kind of perfectly captures it. Um, and I think it's interesting how professors will use different theoretical texts that maybe don't have direct in your face links to architecture, but um, definitely have a place in how we see architecture. Um, yeah, so new theory is one of the things I learned. So end of that end of that studio, I started the second module studio, and it was called Home as Product. I was taught by Deborah Mesa Molina from Ensemble Studio in Madrid. This the second module was different in the sense that it was still the same amount of time, but we took a trip to um, Spain, a week-long trip, and then we also had Thanksgiving break. So there was a lot going on. So the studio felt a little disjointed, but um, no, uh, it was just as amazing as the first one. But before we took that trip, we visited her house in Brookline, so just right outside Boston. She and her husband built this house after they built their primary residence in Madrid. Essentially, this double height space I'm taking these photos in is an additional building or renovation, if you will, of the floor below it. So originally, this site was just a CMU garage, and they built on top of it with this cementitious panels and steel, and all of it fit in a shipping container that they shipped across the Atlantic. Really, really cool ways in which they're building. The studio was all focused on finding new ways to build, new technologies to build, think prefab housing. This house only took a couple weeks to build, really, really quick turnaround. I think it was like close to 14 days. But yeah, so we visited her house and then took a trip to Madrid. It was my first time in Europe. So this is her first house that she built with her partner, the Ameriscopium house. Um, After they built this house, I think she gave a TED talk. But essentially, the house is built out of industrial construction components. So as you can see, the house is made up of kind of like a Jenga puzzle of beams. She was telling us, Deborah, this is her here. She was telling us that in construction, it's expensive to build these concrete beams, not necessarily because of to build the beam, but to build the mold that makes the beam. So what they did is, since the mold has already been built, they just recycle the same mold or ask permission. I'm not sure, they struck up some type of deal with the people making these molds to use the molds they had already made to make these concrete beams. Um, and you can't see from this photo, but the back of the house, there is a huge rock that sits on the roof to kind of level out the structure. But the house is very beautiful. In this beam along here is a swimming pool. There's also a swimming pool down here as well. Really, really beautiful house. Definitely an interesting way to think about building as well. Um, some more photos from the house. The first day we were there, she opened her house up to us, and um, her mother cooked for us. She's a very, very sweet person. Um, while we were there that week, um, we didn't necessarily have a site because the studio was so open. She kind of let us do our own research, and it was meant to be really focused on the technologies of building. But during the trip, we visited a lot of buildings, but we also visited one of their factories, one of their offices called Ensemble Fabrica. And this is the outer portion of the building. They're very much, they call it a factory. They don't even call it like a firm or an office because they build everything themselves. So the architects are more like construction workers. that take creative reign. So this building here is a mock-up of a apartment, full everything to scale. They just continually just make different things. They were um, kind of experimenting with like a pre-made CLT wall that already has all of the electronic MAP, everything just already pre-installed in it. This idea you can just ship out a wall to people looking to build something. Um, they also do a lot of material studies. You can kind of see it along this fence wall here as well. Yeah, very, very interesting office. This is actually the building here. Um, again, using very industrial, creative ways to build. And then on the right, the two buildings on the right are actually public housing in Madrid. The region's called Carabanchel, and it's a very interesting neighborhood, I guess you could call it, in Madrid because they do social public housing. Housing is free, or very close to it. Um, they'll invite architects, the government will invite architects to submit proposals to build social housing. And it's very, very architecturally interesting buildings. It's and they're like maybe like over 100 of these. They're everywhere in this region, and they all look very, very different, but really well done architecturally. It's just very interesting contrast to what we see here in the US. I'd never heard of anything like this before. Um, Again, while we were there, we visited a couple of other architecture offices there. My favorite office we visited was Selgascano. Here, this is a picture from their office. This is also a picture of their office. Their office and their house are on the same land, but their office is kind of, it's hard to tell because we went at night, but sunken into the ground. So this kind of plexiglass is half sunken into the ground. But they do a lot of work, and they build um, homes, offices, things like that. But I think where they really excel is their installations and social spaces. So this is a model of one that's built, or the one they're working on currently. But also had a lot of fun while I was there. Had hot pot for the first time here with some of my classmates. While we were there too, as well, we just so happened to be there at the time that the Norman Foster Foundation was having a talk. So Norman Foster is here and Alejandro Aravena is here. They just so happened to be having a talk, and Deborah knew some of the people there and allowed us to sneak in and get seats. It was very serendipitous. Really, really cool hearing them both speak. Um, but after the trip, we came back and, decided to maybe get to work with some designs. But we actually, before we did that, went to a factory in New Hampshire called Benson Wood Homes, and they are a factory that builds CLT products, kind of similar to that CLT wall Deborah in her office were making. Really, really interesting stuff here. In this main photo is some insulation made out of recycled paper. It's very, very interesting work they do there. But they're a home builder, but they use a lot of different practices in their building. But all of that was, to kind of inspire our studio's work. My submission was this idea of kind of using the social aspects of a Caribbean household, and its priority or maybe its value of social interaction. But my site was kind of situated in the Caribbean immigrant heavy populated neighborhood in Boston. And I was kind of proposing a modular system that could be moved over time, added to over time as families grow, but kind of had a double wall system. to kind of encourage social interaction on in the in-between spots, spaces, but having super highly program programmed core spaces. Um, so part two, I took a landscape studio actually for the full duration of the spring semester. It was called Below, Above, and Beyond, taught by Jung Yoon Kim. Essentially, this project was a real project that was issued to the city of Antwerp, Belgium, and the city of Antwerp kind of utilizes a ring road system for their interstates. So there's a ring road around the entire city that connects the city to highways, but there's a portion of the ring road that wasn't present, that was never built. So the city has been trying for years to develop an underground missing link to the system. And since it was a landscape studio, we were kind of tasked with developing the nodes, the places in which the underground tunnel highway system kind of comes up for air and social interaction, and largely it was an infrastructure project. But again, the studio traveled, and we started off with the trip. Um, we went to Antwerp, Belgium, um, a very, very beautiful place. I had never been to this region. I was really shocked. Antwerp, Belgium is really, really close to the Netherlands. So the portion of Belgium we were in, they speak largely Dutch. But some people speak French. As you go kind of more south in the country, they largely speak French there. And then also in the west, or sorry, the east, um, there's a small population that speaks German there as well. But a very, very, very interesting city. In some ways, I find it kind of hard to describe, but it kind of felt like a fake city. Um, just I don't know, maybe it was the proportion of the streets to building heights, but when you're kind of walking on the street, it's very, very quiet. And then also like kind of the tone or pitch of your voice kind of seems like it's kind of a fabricated set in Hollywood somewhere, but extremely beautiful. Like this is their city hall on the left. Like, come on. Um, so beautiful. And then actually this cathedral is right directly behind me, of where I was taking this photo on the left. This cathedral was right behind me. Very, very beautiful historic places. And then also something I noticed there is the people there are very, very kind. Maybe it's the Dutch way. But it was very shocking to see, like extremely, like noticeably kind. Here on the left is at the MAS. Apparently it had taken quite a while to build. We didn't get to go in and visit due to scheduling, but very interesting building. And then the building on the right, I'm not sure who did it, but I saw it on a walk and it looked really nice. But while we were there, it was served two purposes. We went to go see the site, but also the studio I was in at the GSD was a parallel studio with the University of Antwerp and their master urban design spatial planning school. So the photo on the right um, is our studio kind of interfacing with these Antwerp students. And essentially, most of them were, this was a second career, urban design, urban planning is a second career for them. But the way in which the parallel studio worked is that this prompt has been already given to the students at this point. They actually started working on this project back in the fall. They did a full semester of research, and then in the spring they were gonna do their design. So they were able to kind of help us with the research needed to design these nodes, and kind of be sensitive to the context we were situated in. Um, we also did fun things, and well, it was fun, but kind of dirty. We, in the city of Antwerp, it kind of started via this waterway system, and there's a series of underground sewers called the Rhine that's still currently under the city, not used. But yeah, so we took a tour through the sewers. Very interesting, but pretty in some instances, but it was pretty dirty. But it was nice to see. It was one of the first sewer systems in the world. Um, and being that our studio was kind of like a tunnel studio, it was kind of critical for us to visit. Um, and then we also went to the Royal Museum of Fine Arts. This museum had actually been, um, or the renovation had been in progress for like over 10 years. So it had just opened when we got there. So the picture on the right is a photo from inside the museum. Very, very large museum, probably one of the largest museums I'd ever been in. The photo doesn't do it justice. It's a huge building. Um, but in general, it was pretty interesting, I think, in Belgium to see the varying types of architecture because you have super old classical architecture, different styles of architecture that will live right next to each other, especially in the downtown area. So going back to the project, this is our site. This is the node 4 I was working on. Trying to think about how cars can pass through entering the highway. It's currently a really dangerous spot. I took this from a sidewalk, but it wasn't really a sidewalk. It was just a bike path. Everyone there bikes. So it's really, really hard currently for pedestrians to be able to utilize the site or even just cross the street. So yeah, for my proposal, I just kind of mainly focused on sound and mitigating noise while also promoting accessibility. So I ended the studio with kind of two large landforms to kind of block out the sound, and within those landforms, possessed community programming to kind of to kind of uh, the community programming was kind of to mitigate the sectioning off that the highway did to the community, kind of split off the area into 30 different parts currently. And it was my hope to kind of rejoin the community, rejoin the region back together, and make accessible sky bridges and bike paths while still focusing on an entry uh, point for the um, missing link. Um, this semester or last semester, I also took a class called non-professional practice. It was a elective taught by Ioana Stanescu. Very, very interesting class. I think it was my favorite class I took this past spring. Um, in this class, it was largely focused or largely modeled after the life of Virgil Abloh. Ioana was one of Virgil's close friends before he passed away. And most of the class was us focusing on an element of Virgil's career, his multidisciplinary blueprint, if you will, for how can designers or architects exist in a space outside of traditional architectural practice or alongside traditional architectural practice. Very, very interesting course. We had speakers from all over the world. There were his colleagues during his time working, but we also focused on creating these posters for ourselves. These were like the main project for the semester. We could make it about anything, but I think for me, I kind of took the prompt as a way to um, question things that I once knew, or uh, how I can describe myself in a better way than just saying what I do or um, what I study or what have you. So I tried to classify myself in different ways that maybe you wouldn't normally think of when someone asks, "Who are you? You know, what do you value?" But so in addition to our personal project, we also had to do or host this lecture series. Like I mentioned, the guest I hosted was Benji B. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's a very, very famous DJ in the DJ space. He basically runs the BBC Music division with his weekly DJing. But him and Virgil are very, very close together. So we got to host him. He came in person. It was a very, very nice experience to be able to interact with people who were in the same circle as Virgil. We also had some of his former student um, or younger colleagues, I guess, come in and talk to us as well. He had started a practice with them and they still run it. We had Nora Feldbaum from furniture company in Switzerland come in and talk to us as well. Very, very interesting group of people because they came from all walks of life. DJs, fashion designers, architects, just what seemingly is a random grouping of people, but all coming together and talking about who Virgil was and what he stood for. My group actually studied uh, Virgil's mentorship and how mentorship was basically deeply rooted in everything he did. He kind of communed with people in a way that broke down that typical mentorship relationship. Um, it wasn't necessarily a hierarchy, it was kind of a symbiotic relationship where people could learn from each other. Um, he could learn from them and they could learn from him. Um, yeah, I think that was really, really beautiful. I wish I could have met him, but it was a great class and I'm glad I was able to take part in it. Um, yeah, I think that's it for me. Thank you all for listening. Um, if anyone had any questions, I can answer them, but if not, that's fine too.
Oh, thank you, Aria. That was great, inspiring to hear kind of how the first year of school went and all the different kind of aspects. Like you
Thanks,
said,
Ian.
the floor is open for questions. Um, I'm sure we got some.
I came in a little bit late, so I was just wondering, this is Catherine, hi.
Hi,
I was
Catherine.
just wondering how what you're doing in school is helping you think about when you graduate and sort of like what you want out of your professional experience.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that last few slides when I was talking about that uh, class was really interesting because like Ian mentioned, I run a design practice, but I feel like I've been in like a thinking stage right now because I don't think I mentioned it, but in my research I study kind of a couple different things that maybe are very different. I study the intersections between math and architecture, so like geometries and transformations of form. And then I also study, I'm Caribbean. I study Caribbean decolonization um, and things of that nature. So I felt like I have a lot of different interests. Also in that personal poster, I was also kind of loosely touching on this. I just have a lot of interests, and that's why I started that company. But I also have the interests of pure architecture as well. Like I want to get licensed. That's my main goal. Um, but I think being in school, especially grad school, is really helpful because I can kind of explore these things that aren't necessarily, or maybe you wouldn't necessarily find them in traditional practice. but I can explore them now and kind of really decide on what I want to research independently once I start working, get licensed, as well. But I think school or just thinking in general about what you like to do, what did you like to do in school, and maybe taking that upon yourself to just research as you work a full-time job is a really good way too. But hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Ian, I got one. This is Joel. Hey, Aria, how are you?
Hey, Joelle, good to see you again.
Same here. We really appreciate you spending time to share your first year of grad school.
Of
My
course.
question is, how were you able to, I know coming from a town like Blacksburg here in Virginia, going to, a much bigger environment, um, in Boston, in the Boston area, and obviously going to, the GSD, which is a very reputable school. How were you able to adjust? Were you felt intimidated at first? How were you able to, it seems like you adjusted very well in your classes. I was actually traveling to Europe and all that stuff. But, coming from a, smaller town here in Virginia, going to a bigger city where a lot of diverse students were obviously smart because they got into Harvard as well. How were you able to adjust? Did you have any struggles with that or anything like that?
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Joelle. Yeah, no, it definitely was, difficult at times. I think I spoke a little bit about the beginning. I was really excited, but it felt maybe a little imposter syndrome, or, maybe I need to learn like a bunch more softwares to be able to, do well at the GSD, but I don't think that's the case. I think obviously, the students there are so talented, some of them are really amazing model makers. They make the most precise, like accurate models, or they use the most inventive methods to make a model. Other people are really good at softwares. They can render something that looks so beautiful, or they're really good at speaking about their work, or what have you. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but um, I'm not the best model maker. But I like to make like fun, rough models, and I think in that first module studio, I was able to do that, and it was received well by my professor. So I think that first interaction in a studio setting there at the GST was very reassuring, that I could, fully be myself, and, it would be received well. Um, I think also too, just adjusting to school was not too bad. I I definitely like love cities, so that part was nice, to be in a city. Um, but it was challenging at times, but I think also the community helped a lot. Having students, there was a large, not a large, but there was a significant Black population, um, as I showed in the photo. And that was also helpful because, everyone has different experiences. They're not all from the US, but they have that common Black experience. And that was really nice to be able to kind of meet with them. And also being a part of NOMIS. I was the outreach coach here last year, and this year. But that was also really nice because I was able to kind of be in community with diverse designers, but also um, work with the school too. That was really nice experience to be able to kind of work with the school, to be able to invite people to come and meet with us, or just to get to know the greater student body a little bit better. But yeah, uh I think I was limiting myself when I was scared to fully be myself. But yeah, it was a good transition. I really like it there.
Hey, hey, great. That's great to know. I'm glad you are adjusting and doing pretty well.
Sorry. Thank you.
Kind of on that same topic, is there anything that you would provide as wisdom or guidance for any students who might be an undergrad thinking about going to graduate school, um, that you might not have known when you were in that position?
Yes, of course. Sorry. I'm sorry. I caught a wind of something. I'd say if you're looking to go to grad school, you definitely should. Um, I actually didn't want to go to grad school for a long time. I just wanted to go and live in a city and work. And then I woke up one day and I was like, I didn't want to go to grad school. So I kid you not. I woke up one day, I think I had a dream or something. And I was like, I think I want to go to grad school. So I just did a bunch of research, looked into different programs, and then so sorry. I also really tried to research these schools, design language, design sensibilities, came upon the GSD, and really liked the fact that they were practice focused, but also had theory. Because coming from Virginia Tech, it's a pretty practice heavy school. But yeah, I think if you want to go to grad school, definitely reach out to others who are there. I can share my contact info if anyone's interested. Do your research, do your research, and know that you can do anything you put your mind to, and that you should never limit yourself. And you won't get in if you don't apply. Also, that's a big thing. So yeah, I think those few points are big ones. Thanks, Kathy.
Are there any other questions or comments? I do see one comment in the chat from Kim. She's just saying, thank you for sharing your experience and best of luck.
Oh, thanks, Kim. Thanks, Jean. Yeah, I'll share my email now. Anyone has any more specific questions, feel free to email.
See some of your coworkers from your internship popping up on the screen.
Yes.
I don't know if they have anything to say or add, Zach or Aaron.
We got a sneak peek of the spotlight when we had Aria come in for one of our Studio Thursday sharing sessions. So just wanted to say hi, Aria. We
Hey,
miss you.
Aaron. I miss you too. And Corey's here too. I see Corey. And I'm glad you got to see the presentation, Zach.
Yeah, I missed it the first time, so this was great. Great session, and thanks for sharing your personal experience too, outside of all the school architecture stuff.
Of course. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.
While we have a little bit of time, I don't know, Aaron, if you want to speak about the scholarship that she received and if that's still something that's available in the future at your firm.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about it. So every summer, WPA is committed to our summer intern being part of our, I hope I get the word order right, scholarship program for diversity advancement. We need to find a way to make that easier to remember on the fly. But I think this year we're going to be sending out and opening applications probably in November this time. In the past, it's been, I think, first of the new year. And with that, the intern is with us the whole summer. We only do one so that they truly get a very valuable experience with us at all phases of design, with everyone in the office and all our disciplines from urban design, interiors, architecture, even graphic design tips. And then we help provide resources for them if they're out of town. And then when they complete the program, they leave with a $2,500 scholarship if they are a rising thesis student or if they're entering grad school. we're all about trying to eliminate barriers, and I think a big barrier when you're in school is, you know, just the cost to be a student. Especially when you're entering, you know, yeah, thesis year where you're just expected to, you know, develop lots and lots and lots of things. So if anyone has questions about our program or has possible interest next year, I'm always available to help answer any questions.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see.
Everyone should apply to the internship. It's amazing.
Are there any other questions for Aria?
Is there a particular class you're excited for this? Is it
Ooh.
semester, trimester?
I'm very excited for two things. Studio. There's a studio taught by a Black woman. I've never been taught by a Black woman before in architecture. I really hope I get it. You know, you have to rank your studio preferences by lottery. So I hope I get it. But it's a studio based in Ghana. And the prompt is kind of looking at this historical I think it's like 1400s fortress that's been abandoned, and the community there is kind of transient, almost touristy, but the fort holds a lot of historical significance, and the prompt is kind of reimagining this fortress and what it can be for the community. Super excited about that. For some reason, I feel like I'm always drawn towards projects with forts, so history like that. So hopefully I get it. That would be an interesting course. And then there's also another course, an elective taught by these Black twins, Taman and Teron Evans. They worked at or executives at General Mills or something like that, I believe. They also went to the GSD. But the studio is about like supermarkets and food and design and food insecurity. Super interesting stuff. So hopefully I get that one too.
I have one other question, I guess.
Yeah.
Just because when you said that you kind of weren't considering grad school before, I was just wondering, because you went to Virginia Tech and I assume you have the 5-year VR.
Yeah.
So like a master's wasn't necessarily required. So I was just wondering, I guess, what are you really trying to focus on? Like the design, since you said practice was so heavy at Virginia Tech, are you really trying to focus more on design and sort of design thinking? And then also maybe if you could talk a little bit about like cost and like, are you just paying for yourself, or there's scholarships or anything that you like really sought after, or is the school helping to support you in getting your master's?
Yeah. I think I chose the GSD because of a couple of reasons. I think the focus on practice was really nice because I do want to practice, but I decided to get the degree in part because I also want to teach. I'd like to become a professor, you know, be, what's this saying? Like, be who you wish was there for you or something like that. So I love to teach in the future, but I think getting licensed is my number one priority, and I really liked the focus on practice there. Also being able to kind of stretch my design thinking and creativity, just being in a place that's very inspiring. I think that was really important to me. And then the GSD does offer scholarships. They have like financial aid like everywhere else. They offer grants, and then like, well, I guess Pell Grants and like work study. So I have work study, but I mean it doesn't really cover all of that bill. So being able to invest in my education is important. But yeah. But there are also a lot of what's the word? Like scholarships that you can win at the GSD. So like if you're in the studio,
Mhm.
what is it? like prizes. That's the term. So like
Gotcha.
if you're in a studio or they have them, there's like a bunch of them. So like if you win one of them, like one of them is like $50,000 or something like that. So like, like everyone wants to work hard to be able to get the prizes. But yeah.
Okay. It's an issue just because if you look at like the NCARB data and like who is actually coming out of school with the most amount of debt, it's usually us.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's definitely
Understood.
a hindrance and stuff when you get out into the practice and like what jobs people go after and what opportunities people feel
Yeah.
like they can have. So if you have debt, it's a little bit limiting.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's why I think the WPA scholarship is really good too. Like I was able to buy my computer with that scholarship. So kind of enabling better access to success as well.
Gotcha.
It's good to know. And when you're done with grad school, Joelle's got some great ARE series prep to get your license.
Ooh, yes.
And I know Catherine's got some scholarship things available for
yeah.
that process when you're ready. But I'm glad that's your number one goal when you're done. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. I want to
I
thank
couldn't
you
agree
again.
more. It's important. It's
Yeah,
very important.
yeah. Thank you again for sharing your story. Is Kelly on the line? Kelly Holmes?
I'm here.
All right, you want to close this out and share what's up next?
Yeah, sure. Let me get our PowerPoint up here. All right. So again, thank you all for attending today, and great events like this are made possible by our wonderful sponsors here on screen. So thank you so much to each and every one of these organizations, including We're Program Architects, featured here today. And in terms of what's coming up next, oh, and you can also find us on the web, like, share. But what's coming up next is Mira Abdallah. This will be an in-person event at VMDO's office in Charlottesville, Virginia at 6 p.m. And we're super excited about it and looking forward to it. I think she was on the line earlier. I'm not sure if she's still on the call and wants to tout this exciting event coming up in September.
Hi, yes, I am on the call. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation, Aria. It was very inspiring. And yeah, I'm really excited to give the next one. It will be in person at VMDO, as well as, virtual. So we look forward to having you all there. I'll be talking about my background being a Muslim architect architectural designer and working at VMDO. And also some of the stuff I've been interested in on the side. So yeah, excited to see you all there.
Oh, Ian, you're muted.
Oh, I was muted. Oh, I was just saying awesome. I'm looking forward to it. So again, thank you everyone, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week. Take care.
Thank you.